Come stand with me for a minute. Not on the golf course, in your own backyard, on a late August morning, with the second cup of coffee in your hand. The dew is still sitting on the grass. It's been sitting there since sunrise, and it hasn't burned off yet, and that alone tells you something has quietly changed. A week ago, that dew was gone before you got your shoes on. Now look down, right there, between your feet. Maybe you see a little clover. Maybe a dandelion rosette flattened out where the mower goes over it. Maybe a patch of crabgrass along the driveway that showed up in July and settled in like it pays rent. And you've probably had this thought before. You drive past a golf course, and the fairway is one long green carpet. No dandelions, no clover, no crabgrass creeping in from the edges. Hundreds of feet walking on it every day. Same sun, same rain, same soil, more or less, as your yard. So how do they do it? Here's what I'm going to give you today, and I'm going to give it to you early, because I don't believe in making people wait for the thing they came for. The product is real. It costs a couple of dollars for 1,000 square feet if you shop the plain generic version. I'll tell you exactly what it's called in a few minutes, exactly what to look for on the shelf, and exactly what that $2 does and does not cover. But here's my warning, and I mean it kindly. You can buy the right product, spread it correctly, and still waste every penny of it, because you put it down in the wrong week. That's the part nobody puts on the bag. And there's something bigger still. Before you spend $1, there is one decision you have to make about your lawn this fall. And if you get it backwards, you will either kill the grass seed you just paid for, or you'll leave the door wide open for next spring's weeds. It's a fork in the road, seed or prevent. We'll get to that. Stay with me. Now let's be honest about the golf course, because I've never been one to oversell. When I say a golf course never has weeds, what I mean is what your eye sees. Walk a good fairway, and you will not find weeds. That's real. But the grounds crew hasn't taken some sacred vow against ever spraying anything. A superintendent will still spot treat. They've got products labeled for fairways and roughs, and they use them when something breaks through. The difference is how rarely they need to. Because a golf course isn't running a bag of chemicals. It's running a system. The right grass species for that climate, chosen on purpose. Watering deep and less often, so roots go down instead of sideways. Feeding on a schedule. Mowing so often the grass never gets a chance to thin out. And prevention laid down before the weed season opens, not after. That's the first thing I want to lodge in your mind, and I'd like you to carry it out to the yard with you. A perfect lawn is not a product, it's a system. The product is one wheel on the cart. And that's actually good news for you and me, because we can't afford their equipment, and we don't have their crew. But the system scales down to a 1/4 acre and a Saturday morning just fine. All right, the product. What golf courses put down, and what you can buy at any big box store or farm supply, is called a pre-emergent herbicide. Pre-emergent. Before it emerges. The name is the whole instruction. On the shelf you'll see it 2 ways. There's the granular kind, which comes in a bag and often has fertilizer mixed in, and you spread it with the same drop spreader or broadcast spreader you already own. Then there's the liquid concentrate, which comes in a jug, and you mix it with water and spray it. The active ingredient, meaning the thing that actually does the work, will be printed on the label. One of the common ones is prodiamine. You'll also see dithiopyr and pendimethalin and a few others depending on what part of the country you're in. Don't let those names rattle you. You don't need to memorize chemistry. You need to be able to turn the bag around and read 4 lines. What weeds it controls, what grasses it's safe on, how much to use, and when to put it down. Now, about that $2, because I want to be square with you. The $2 figure comes from the concentrate. Buy a jug of a generic prodiamine product, mix it at the label rate, and the cost of treating 1,000 square feet works out to somewhere around a couple of dollars. That's the honest math. It is not $2 for your whole yard. If your lawn is 5,000 square feet, you're doing that 5 times. If you buy the granular bag with fertilizer blended in, you're paying more, because you're also buying the fertilizer. And prices move around by brand, by region, and by year. So what's actually true is this. Compared to what most folks spend fighting weeds all season, bottle after bottle of spray, this is cheap. Genuinely, Remarkably cheap. Cheaper than one dinner out, for most yards. But cheap only pays off if the timing is right. And that brings me to the part that changed how I think about the whole business. Let me ask you something. Where do you suppose all these weeds are coming from? Most of us assume they blow in. Off the neighbor's yard, off the field down the road, off the wind. Some do. But the truth is a good deal stranger than that. The weeds are already here. They're under your feet right now. Not as plants, as seeds. Sitting in the top inch or two of your soil. Dormant, patient, waiting for the one season that suits them. Agronomists call it the seed bank, and I've always thought that was exactly the right word for it. It's a bank. Deposits go in every year a weed set seed, and withdrawals happen every time conditions are right for one to sprout. Studies of cultivated soils have counted seed banks in the tens of thousands per square meter in heavily worked ground. Your lawn is almost certainly not that bad, because turf is not tilled. But the principle holds. Under a settled old lawn there are more weed seeds than you would ever guess. And here's the part that still stops me. In 1879, a botanist named William James Beal, at what is now Michigan State University, wanted to know how long weed seeds could stay alive in the ground. So he mixed seeds with sand, filled 20 glass bottles, and buried them on a hillside on campus. He left instructions for future scientists to come dig one up every so often and see if anything still grew. They're still digging them up. Generations of researchers have taken their turn. In 2000, a bottle was recovered, and seeds from it still germinated, more than 120 years after Beal buried them. Think about that for a second. Beal has been gone for over a century. The men who dug up the first bottles are gone, and the seeds woke up anyway. Now. Nobody's saying every seed in your yard has that kind of stamina. Most don't. Many weed seeds die off in a year or two, but some persist for years, and they don't need a majority. They only need a turn. Which means pulling a dandelion out of your lawn does not remove the problem. It removes one plant from a very old ledger. So the question stops being, how do I kill what's up? And it becomes something better. How do I stop the withdrawals? Which brings us to the thing I find genuinely lovely about how a pre-emergent works. And I think it's going to surprise you, because it surprised me. A pre-emergent does not kill weeds. It really doesn't. It's not a poison sitting in your soil waiting to ambush a dandelion. If a weed is already growing out there, a pre-emergent will look right past it and leave it alone. What it does is this. Once you spread it and water it in, it settles into the very top layer of the soil and stays there. It doesn't wash down deep. It sits in that thin zone where seeds germinate. And when a weed seed down there takes on water and starts to wake up, it sends out its first tiny root and its first pale shoot. That seedling, in those first hours of life, is about as fragile as anything in nature. It runs into that treated layer, and the herbicide interferes with the cells that are dividing to build that root and shoot. The seedling never makes it to daylight. So you never see the weed. Not because something killed it in your lawn, but because it never became a plant in the first place. That's the whole trick. It isn't a barrier like a sheet of plastic. Nothing is blocked, physically. It's more like the difference between locking a door and simply making sure nobody ever comes down that hallway. And once you understand that, you understand everything that follows. Because if the product only works on a seed that's in the act of germinating, then the timing isn't one detail among many. The timing is the whole thing. So when do weed seeds germinate? Here's where most of us go wrong, and I include myself in that for a good many years. We put weed control down when we see weeds. It feels responsible. It is also, unfortunately, the one moment the product can't help us. Weeds run on soil temperature. Not the calendar, and not the air temperature you hear on the morning news. The temperature of the ground itself, a couple of inches down. There are 2 doors in the year. The spring door belongs to the summer annual weeds. Crabgrass is the famous one. Extension programs, including work out of the Northeast, have used the same guidance for decades. Crabgrass germination gets going when soil temperature climbs into the mid-50s and holds there for several days in a row. And there's an old sign that goes with it. When the forsythia is in full bloom, that's your reminder. It isn't magic. The forsythia is simply responding to the same warming ground that the crabgrass seed is responding to. 2 neighbors waking up to the same alarm clock. Now the fall door, and this one is the reason we're talking in August. The fall door belongs to the winter annual weeds. Annual bluegrass, which folks often call Poa annua, chickweed, henbit. These sprout as the soil cools back down, and university guidance, including from the University of California's Integrated Pest Management Program, points to soil temperature dropping back through about 70 degrees as the trigger. They come up quietly in fall. They sit there all winter looking like nothing much, and then in spring they explode, set seed, and hand the next generation right back to the bank. Most homeowners have never heard of the fall window. They think weed prevention is a springtime chore. So every fall, that door stands wide open. Now, I want to be careful here, because 70 degrees is not a national holiday. It arrives at different times in Michigan than it does in Georgia. It arrives at different times on the north side of your house than the south side. And different products are labeled for different weeds and different grasses, so seeing 70 degrees is not a signal to run out and apply whatever's in the garage. 2 guardrails, and please write these down. First, your local cooperative extension office. Every state has one, tied to the land-grant university, and their turf recommendations are written for your county, not for the internet. They are free. They're staffed by people who have looked at more lawns than either of us ever will, and in my experience, they answer the phone. Second, the label. And I'll say this more than once today because it matters more than anything I could tell you. The label is the law. It's not a suggestion sheet. It is a legal document, and it is also the single most useful piece of lawn advice you will ever read for free. If you want to actually watch that soil temperature yourself, get a cheap soil thermometer. They cost a few dollars at a garden center. They've got a long probe, and they're made for exactly this. And please, buy one just for the yard. Don't take the meat thermometer out of the kitchen drawer, stick it in the dirt, and put it back next to the roasting pan. I know that sounds obvious. I also know exactly how these things happen on a Saturday. Check it mid-morning, in a sunny spot, a couple of inches down. Same place, same time, a few days running. When the numbers start walking down towards 70 and staying there, your window is opening. All right. Let's say you've read your label, you've talked to extension, and the timing is right. How do you actually put it down? 3 things, and the third one is the one people skip. First, even coverage. This is not the place for enthusiasm in one corner and a shrug in the other. Set your spreader to the setting printed on the bag. Walk a steady pace. Overlap your passes slightly, the way you'd mow. If you leave a strip untreated, you will find out about it next spring, because weeds will come up in a line so straight you could hang a picture by it. Second, the correct rate. Whatever the label says, that's the amount, not a little extra for insurance. More is not better. More can injure your grass, and depending on the product, it can be against the law. The rate on that bag came out of years of university trials. Trust it. Third, water it in. This is the step that quietly ruins more applications than any other. Pre-emergent sitting dry on top of your grass blades is doing nothing at all. It has to be carried down into that top layer of soil to get into position. Some products want a certain amount of irrigation within a certain number of days. Some are fine to sit and wait for rain within a window. Some liquid formulations have their own instructions entirely. The label will tell you which one you're holding. Now, here's an old kitchen trick that helps you know what you've actually done, and I still use it. Set a few empty tuna cans out on the lawn before you turn the sprinkler on. Straight-sided, about an inch tall, and they cost you nothing but a sandwich. Run the sprinkler, then go look. When you can see how deep the water is in those cans, you know what your sprinkler actually delivers in 20 minutes, instead of guessing. But let me be clear. The tuna can doesn't tell you how much water to use. The label does that. The can just tells you when you've gotten there. Even coverage, label rate, watered in as directed. That's the job. It's honestly not a hard job. It's just an unforgiving one about timing. Now let's talk about what goes wrong, because I'd rather you hear it from me than learn it in April. Mistake 1 is putting it down late. If the seeds have already germinated, that's it. You bought a product for a moment that has passed. This is the #1 reason people say the stuff doesn't work. Mistake 2 is patchy spreading, which we covered, but I'll add one thing. Walk your edges. The driveway, the sidewalk, The curb strip. Those edges run hotter and drier than the middle of your lawn, and crabgrass loves them for exactly that reason. Mistake 3 is expecting one application to cover the whole year. These products break down in the soil over a couple of months. That's by design, and it's a good thing. But it means a fall application is protecting the fall germination window, not next July. And now the fourth one, which, as it turns out, may not be a mistake at all. You'll hear it said constantly that if you core aerate after putting down a pre-emergent, you punch holes through the treatment and weeds pour in. It sounds so sensible. It's also been tested, quite a lot, and the results are more interesting than the folklore. Work by Branham and Riquet at Michigan State in the 1980s, and separate work by B.J. Johnson in Georgia across several years, looked at core aerating before and at various intervals after pre-emergent applications. In general, they did not find meaningful increases in crabgrass. Carl Danneberger, the turf scientist at Ohio State, has made a similar point, noting that in dense, healthy turf, core aeration doesn't compromise the treatment the way people fear. But I'm not going to hand you a new absolute to replace the old one. That would be trading one piece of received wisdom for another. Here's the honest version. The research does not support the idea that aeration automatically wrecks your weed control. However, some product labels specifically direct you to cultivate before applying, not after. And when the label says something, that settles it, no matter how the research reads. So if your soil is compacted and needs aerating, aerate. Do it first if you can. And read your label, because your label is the one that governs your bag. I like that one because it's a good reminder that a lot of what gets passed around the fence line has never been checked. Some of it holds up beautifully. Some of it turns out to be a story we've all been telling each other. Now, the fork in the road. This is the decision I promised you at the start, and for a great many of you it's going to be the most important minute of this whole video. If you are planning to overseed your lawn this fall, you generally cannot put down a conventional pre-emergent at the same time. Think about why. That product interrupts seedlings as they germinate. It has no way of knowing whether the seed germinating in front of it is crabgrass or the expensive tall fescue you just spread. Both are seeds. Both are germinating. Both get stopped. And this hits cool season lawns hardest, which is most of the northern half of the country. Kentucky bluegrass, tall fescue, perennial ryegrass, fine fescue. For those grasses, fall is the finest seeding season of the entire year. The soil is still warm, the air is cooling, the weed pressure has eased. If your cool season lawn is thin, fall seeding is the single best thing you can do for it. So a lot of northern homeowners genuinely face a choice this fall: prevention or seed. And I want to tell you how I'd think it through. If your lawn is thin, patchy, worn along the paths, bare under the maple, then your problem is not weeds. Your problem is emptiness, and weeds are just the symptom. Seed it. Skip the pre-emergent this fall. Come back to prevention next year once you've got something worth protecting. If your lawn is already thick and full, and what bothers you is weeds coming up through decent turf, then you don't need seed. You need the fall window. Put your prevention down and keep what you've got. What you should not do is both, on the same ground, at the same time. That's how folks end up paying for grass seed that never comes up and blaming the seed company. Now, there are some specialty products with different labels around seeding, and rates and waiting periods vary a great deal. If you're curious about that, this is precisely the conversation to have with your extension office, holding the product in your hand. I'm not going to give you a rule from here that might not fit your bag. And if you have a warm season lawn, Bermuda, Zoysia, Centipede, St. Augustine, down through the south, your calendar looks different entirely. Your grass is heading toward dormancy in fall rather than into its best growing season, so fall seeding usually isn't the play, and fall prevention against winter annuals is often exactly right. Same principles, different schedule. Your extension office has that schedule written down for your county. If nothing else sticks from today, let it be this: there is no single national lawn calendar. There's yours. Now let me tell you what a pre-emergent will not do, because I would rather under-promise to you than have you disappointed in April. It controls the weeds named on the label. That's the whole list. Not every green thing you don't like. If crabgrass is your grief, look for crabgrass on the label. If it's annual bluegrass, look for annual bluegrass. If the weed you're worried about isn't printed there, that product is not the answer for it. It does not touch weeds that are already growing. Not a bit. And here's the one that trips up the most people, so let's be plain about it. Dandelions and clover are perennials. They come back from established roots year after year. A dandelion's taproot goes down like an anchor. That plant is not germinating from seed each spring, it's waking up. So a pre-emergent will help reduce new dandelion and clover seedlings getting started. It will do exactly nothing to the ones already living in your yard. Those need a different approach entirely. Sometimes a post-emergent product labeled for broadleaf weeds in your grass type. Sometimes just digging them, deep, getting the crown. And sometimes, honestly, a little tolerance. I'll say the quiet part. A few dandelions never hurt anybody. The bees rather like them. I'm not sure a lawn has to be a sworn enemy of every yellow flower to be a good lawn. But I understand wanting a clean one, and there's nothing wrong with that either. If this has been useful so far, and you're the sort of person who likes gardening talk, that tells you the limits along with the promises, go ahead and subscribe. That's all the asking I'll do. There's a new one every week, always for folks who've been at this a while. Now, the second half of the golf course secret. And this one costs you nothing. Go back to that fairway in your mind. It isn't just weed-free. It's dense, unreasonably dense. There is no bare dirt anywhere. You couldn't find a gap to drop a dime in. That density is doing weed control every hour of every day, for free. Because a weed seed needs two things to get started. It usually needs light reaching the soil surface, and it needs open room to grow into. A thick lawn takes away both. The canopy shades the ground so seeds down there stay in the dark. And if one does manage to sprout, there's simply nowhere to go. It gets crowded and shaded out by grass on every side before it amounts to anything. So the course gets weed control twice. The pre-emergent handles the germination window. The turf itself handles everything else, all year, without a bag or a sprayer. Now here's the part where I have to correct something you might reasonably assume. Do not copy the golf course mowing height. A fairway is cut around half an inch. Half an inch. If you tried that on the average home lawn, you'd have bare dirt by August and a beautiful crop of crabgrass by the following June. They get away with it because they're growing grasses bred to be cut that low, creeping bent grass in the north, Bermuda in the south, and they're mowing nearly every day, watering, and feeding to support it. What you should copy is not the height, it's the reason behind it. They are managing for density. For a home lawn, density comes from cutting high, not low. For most cool season grasses, that means somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 3.5 inches, and your extension office can give you the right range for your specific grass. Taller blades shade their own soil, and taller grass grows deeper roots. It also comes from mowing often enough that you're never taking off more than about a third of the blade at a cut. From watering deeply and less often, so roots chase the moisture downward. From feeding at the right season for your grass type. None of that is exotic. It's just doing ordinary things at the right time, which turns out to be the whole story of gardening. And here's why I want you to care about density more than the product. A pre-emergent is a temporary thing. It fades in a couple of months, by design. A thick lawn does not fade. It gets better every year you tend it. In the early years, prevention does the heavy lifting while the grass fills in. Then, slowly, the turf takes over the job. And one day you notice you have very few weeds, even in a season you didn't treat. That's the finish line. A lawn dense enough to defend itself. The product is how you get there faster. The density is what keeps you there. Before I give you the plan, one bonus for the fall, and it costs you nothing but saves you work. Don't rake all your leaves. Mow them. Run the mower over them while they're dry. Cut them into small pieces and let them fall down into the turf. And there's real research behind this, not just thrift. Long-running work at Michigan State, with Thomas Nicolai and Paul Reiki among the researchers, mulched tree leaves into Kentucky bluegrass turf year after year and found no harm to turf quality. Later work published in Hort Technology by Kowalewski and colleagues found that mulched maple and oak leaves were associated with reduced common dandelion populations in established Kentucky bluegrass. Now, the limits, and they matter. The leaves have to be chopped small enough to filter down between the grass blades. If you leave a thick mat sitting on top of the turf over winter, you will smother the grass and cause yourself a real problem. If the leaf fall is heavy, do it in stages, a pass at a time, rather than one enormous pile. And this is a support practice. It is not a substitute for prevention, and it will not remove the dandelions you already have. But less raking, fewer bags at the curb, better soil, and a modest hand against next year's weeds? For those of us whose backs have opinions about autumn, that's a fine trade. And if you're wondering about corn gluten meal, which comes up every time this subject does, I'll just say that field results have been inconsistent enough that I wouldn't lean on it as an equivalent to a labeled pre-emergent. It's a decent nitrogen source. All right, get a pencil. This is the whole thing on one piece of paper, and you can stick it inside a cabinet door. 1. Identify the weed. Actually look at it, name it, and know whether it's an annual coming from seed or a perennial coming back from roots. 2. Identify your grass. Cool season or warm season. Everything downstream depends on this. 3. Check your local conditions and your cooperative extension guidance. Soil temperature in your yard, timing for your county. 4. Decide, honestly, whether this season is for seeding or for prevention. Thin lawn, seed it. Thick lawn with weeds, prevent. 5. Choose a product whose label lists your weed and your grass. 6. Apply it evenly, at the label rate, and activate it exactly as directed. Follow the label on children, pets, and staying off the treated area. 7. Keep building thicker turf through correct mowing, deep watering, and proper feeding. 7 lines. That's the golf course, scaled down to your yard and your Saturday. So the next time you drive past that fairway, you'll see it differently. They're not working harder than you. They're not hiding some product you can't buy. They made a handful of unglamorous decisions in the right order, at the right time of year, and then they kept the grass thick enough that the soil never gets a chance to offer anybody a vacancy. And I keep coming back to Beal's bottles on that hillside. All those seeds, lying quiet under the ground, outliving the man who buried them. There's something humbling in it. We're not really conquering anything out here. We're just deciding, each season, which things get invited up. Now I'd love to hear from you, because these comments teach me more than most of what I read. Tell me the weed you can't beat, the one that comes back every single year no matter what you do. I read them all, and it tells me what to cover next. And tell me something else. In your mother's garden or your grandmother's, was there a weed she never did conquer? Is there a trick that's been handed down in your family that you still use, even if nobody can explain why it works? And here's the one I really want. In your part of the country, what's the plant that tells you it's time? Around here, the forsythia does it in spring. I've never found a good one for fall. If you've got a sign you watch for, put it in the comments. I'd like to borrow it. Take care of that patch of ground. It'll take care of you back.